Another thing that I learned is that, especially when you're traveling, you're going to have to go very, 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 very far out of your comfort zone. Like 2 buses, a plane ride, and a very long walk out of your comfort zone. Especially because a lot of times it was like every few days I was in a completely different culture with a new language, with new ways of doing things, and you just kind of had to adapt really quickly. So it wasn't always easy. My 2 biggest insights about this is 1, don't be so easily offended, and 2, don't be careful not to be offensive. So I feel like as an American, a lot of people in Europe have these preconceived notions of how Americans are and how they expect us to be, just as we have the same preconceived notions. And a lot of times people will assume things about you when you travel, and you can't be so offended. At the end of the day, you have to take everything with a grain of salt. You have to realize that people have a completely different culture than you, and even sometimes when people are offensive to you, it's not that they mean to be offensive, it's just that they do things very differently, or they're just not used to you and your culture, and that's life. If you can adapt to not being so offended, I think it really opens your mind to like different ways of living and stuff like that, because I don't have the words to say. Honestly, this part I'm just gonna read straight off my phone because this is a lot to read, and I'm gonna mess it up more times than I would like to if I try to remember it. But so this is basically about how traveling isn't just like sunsets and rainbows and beautiful happy sights, but it's actually like difficult sometimes. So I wrote, traveling is missing your train stop because you've traveled all night and didn't wake up in time. It's meeting really amazing people and then having to say goodbye for what very well might be forever. It's hearing the inevitable bike bell because you're accidentally standing in the bike lane. It's having to look both ways but an extra 2 times for said bike lanes when you're crossing the street. Traveling is having to rely on the kindness of strangers because you're utterly lost. Has happened to me more than once while I was on that trip. Traveling is having to use Google Translate on your phone to communicate with someone because they don't speak your language. And like, I felt very silly at first when I did that, but when you get over that and you realize like, okay, it's either we do this or we don't understand each other, you feel a lot better about it. It's just missing your train and just making your train. It's not having your seat on a 3-hour-long train ride. It's a lot of scary things, uncomfortable and unexpected things, but it's also a lot of wonderful, fantastic, brilliant things, words. And I honestly think because of my trip, I'm a lot more likely to just let things roll off my back and not react so easily, especially because I was alone. I didn't have someone to be my emotional sponge to rely on to like be calm while I was the one freaking out. Like, I could not afford to freak out when I was by myself. I had to pause and I had to adjust myself because my feet were so asleep I could not feel them anymore. Anyway, next I want to be talking about how like traveling changes you as a person, and kind of I feel like I grew as a person, and of course that's going to be different for everyone who travels, and this is just how I feel like I've grown. And honestly, I feel like I've developed a little more as a human being and like a Shaunté 2.0. It's very strange, but I think even though for the most part I've been living alone for the past 4 years while I was at college, I think it was always a comfort to know if I needed someone, they were a phone call away. If I wanted to go home, I could get in my car and drive half an hour to go home. When you are literally across the world, you kind of gain this independence that you wouldn't have even if you were living at home. Like, there's just different types of independence, I think. And while I was traveling, I relied a lot more on myself. It's not to say that I still didn't call home and when I got sad, and I still didn't have friends who were there for me when I felt homesick or when something went wrong. But overall, like, I was a lot more independent over there than I was here, and that's really saying something because I already kind of consider myself independent. But I think even if it's small and insignificant, your personality kind of changes a little when you're away from home and all the comfort of the people you know. And I just think like it gives you a fresh perspective. I think this is what I'm most thankful for, besides like all the connections that I made, is that in going so far away from home and leaving all of my comforts behind, I started thinking differently. I had a more open mind about things, and it's really awesome. This is another one that I'm going to read because, you know, it's a lot. Anyway, another realization that I made is that sometimes you have to leave things behind. Sometimes you don't, and you'll know the difference, but I think this is a really important one because too often we try to get too much of what isn't for us. We stay in relationships that our heart isn't in anymore simply because we really liked them at one point. We stay in friendships that we don't even connect with the people anymore simply because we've been friends for years and years and years. And I think when you're living out of a suitcase, a very small suitcase, and you're constantly packing up and going, you realize that you don't actually need a lot of stuff. You want those stuff, but you don't actually need them. And sometimes you have to leave behind really great things to move on to even better things. And that's how traveling kind of was, because I'm that person who like, oh, I really love this place, but I also really love this place. So at times it was really hard leaving one city to go to another city, but I don't know, I don't know where I'm going with this. I hope you get what I'm saying. But yes, you have to leave things behind sometimes, even when it's hard. I also realized that a lot of life is about the little things. You don't know how excited I was every time I heard a police car going and it was like, wee woo, wee woo, wee woo. Because in America, that's not how the police cars sound at all. So it's like it's just something so little, and I know it sounds so silly, but that's what I would literally do when police cars pass by, because it was fascinating to me, and that's just me. But also things like a supermarket. Whenever I went to a new city, and especially a new country, I tried to at least visit one supermarket, because just the range of products and the types of products, they're completely different. And I think that's so cool, because supermarkets, we kind of just take them for granted. We always go to the supermarket, but they're actually really different when you go to different countries, and I found that really cool. Little things. I missed grass. I missed grass a lot, and it's not one of those things you expect to miss, but I live in suburbia. We have a front yard, we have a backyard, we have grass along all of our sidewalks, and when you go to a big city, or most big cities at least, you just don't have that. It's just concrete, it's just floor, ground, there's no grass. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, you got the wrong dog if you ever think my Coda would poop on the sidewalk. But even the water tasted better in some countries, and that's not something you think about because you're just so used to your own water. But when I had my first glass of water in Europe, which was in Stockholm, I was like, wow, this water tastes really good. And by really good, I mean it tastes like nothing, like water is supposed to taste like. But here, if you get tap water, it just tastes like tap water, and it has a taste, and it tastes dirty, and it tastes mineralized, and it does not just taste like nothing. And I know in the grand scheme of things, those are all really, really small, insignificant things, but I think I'm gonna remember them strangely. And let the little things excite you, let the little things piss you off. I think, it's important. And overall, my biggest takeaway from this trip is that you've got to do the things that you want to do. There were a lot of people telling me that I shouldn't go, or that I'm crazy for going alone, but those same people were the people when I came back telling me that they were so proud of me and that I was so brave. And I regret nothing, not a thing. Looking down my bank account, I regret nothing. Looking at all the time that I had to be away from my family, it was hard, but I regret nothing. And it was an experience of a lifetime, and I'm so happy that I didn't listen to the people who tried to get me to not go. Another really nice thing was realizing that you can always find a bit of home wherever you go. The world's a small place. The very first person I met in Europe went to my went to my college, and in a random pub crawl in Prague, I met two girls who lived in my hometown. People in my state of New Jersey don't even know where my hometown is, and I met people miles and miles and kilometers away from my hometown who I can get into a car and, if I really wanted to, drive 5-10 minutes and be at their house. And that's crazy to me, but it is such a small world, and things like traveling and the internet, it makes it so much smaller, and I'm a fan. I dig it. I am such a fan. But Anyway, I don't know what else I have to say, and I actually have to go because priorities, not priorities, commitments, other commitments have to go. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. If you didn't, I'm sorry. This was honestly a video for me to look back on because yeah, I do that. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are, whatever time it is, whether it's whatever, I don't know where I was going with that. Anyway, I hope you're having a great day, and if you're not having a great day, I hope tomorrow is better, because that's usually how life works. Sometimes it's worse though, so don't take my word. I'm gonna go before I start spewing more nonsense. Okay, bye guys.